10. Welcome to This Week in Kansas with your host, Tim Brown.
Hello and welcome to This Week in Kansas. Thank you for being with us this morning. A bill that would reward foster parents for being traditional families is getting a lot of attention and creating quite a stir. The bill would pay more to foster parents if they don't smoke or drink, are married, faithful, and only one works outside of the home. Former Republican Senator Tim Owens says Governor Sam Brownback wants to change the way judges are chosen so they will rule the way the governor wants them to. Owens says the governor told him that in a meeting. And some form of Medicaid expansion, will that be getting closer to reality in Kansas? We'll talk about that. A lot to cover on the show this morning, but let's start off with foster parents and the foster system here in the state of Kansas. And this is a very interesting bill, and it's received a lot of attention across the state, nationally actually, for the language of the bill.
It's a typical thing in a legislative session for balloons to be released and then to see whether they get shot down or not. Individual legislators can generate any bill they want. Committees can request that a bill be drafted. That doesn't mean it's going to get enacted. There are some interesting concepts in this legislation. I've been on Senator Knox's email list for many years, and I've read his comments. I've looked at what the bill says and how it's been reported in the paper, and the description has been reasonably close to it. And the other component of it that seems to be getting a lot of criticism is that the bill promises to pay these foster parents more or reimburse them for the costs of private education or homeschooling these foster children. And the one irony I found in that was that Mark Talman, with the State Association of School Boards, said that it would provide funding with no accountability as to academic results. And I'm going like, okay, well, I understand that. I think I understand what the senator's intent is and what he's trying to do. I think the prospects of enactment are somewhere in the neighborhood of remote.
Bob Phil is so nice.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Looking at the list of things that foster parents can't do if they want to participate in this program, I'm surprised I don't see a rock and roll on there. I mean, he's got sex, he's got drugs, it's all just missing prohibition on rock and roll and jazz and ragtime is pretty much that.
The line of the show. I think we're done, okay? We'll see you guys next week. We'll just run commercials for the next 58 minutes.
Yeah, there we
go.
Now,
there is, in all seriousness, there is a fiscal note attached to this bill. That, of course, is the analysis prepared by the Division of Budget that talks about the financial aspects, the costs or the revenues, whatever it may be. And the fiscal note is not all that big, $870,000, except there's something called potential loss of Title 4-E funds for being out of 4-E compliance. Evidently, these families would be outside the bounds of some sort of program. I'm not exactly sure. I think Phil is nodding here. But we would not get some reimbursement from the federal government. That is a huge number. It's $25.6 million, estimated again by the Division of Budget. So, $870,000, that's one thing. $25 million is something else.
That's another big hole right there.
Let me explain how that works. When you look at the state's overall budget, it's about $13 billion a year. Roughly half of that money is the general fund. That's what the legislature decides to spend. The other half is actually federal money that passes through and is administered by the state of Kansas. And this is some of that money. Title 4E, Title 7, Title 3, whatever. If you don't comply with the federal rules, they turn off the spigot. I mean, that's their way to coerce local and state units of government to do what they want them to do, and there are certain guidelines under the federal law that must be met. This bill, obviously, according to the legislative staff, is not going to meet that, and that's where that money shortfall would come from. And another reason to say remote is a kind description of its enactment possibilities.
Well, and it's just, it just sounds like such a silly bill on the surface of things. I don't know that.
I don't know. I think it'd make a great postcard for a campaign.
Well, it might make a great campaign postcard, but it doesn't make a great legislation.
In doing some readings, these foster homes are regulated to some degree anyway. For example, smoking. I do believe that secondhand smoke is a hazard, especially for children who don't really have a choice to go to escape it, but evidently the foster families cannot smoke inside their homes. So some of that's taken care of a little bit already.
There are a lot of rules foster parents have to comply with. They have to take first aid. They have to understand CPR. If they do smoke tobacco products, they have to do so outside the home so that the children are not exposed to secondhand smoke.
Well, okay, and here's participate in a church or similar social organization that would qualify, refrain from extramarital. How do you even track stuff like this? I mean,
well, and
honestly, I just
that's a question in many pieces of legislation. Is you can express the policy decision, but how are you going to enforce it?
What church? How do you determine what is a
what if they were
church?
Wiccan?
That was what I was going to say. We've seen a big bunch of controversy just south of the border here in the state of Oklahoma, where they tried to put up a statue of the Satanists did, because they're on state ground near the Capitol, I guess, because there's a Ten Commandments statue or something like that. And the point was, well, if you're going to be fair, you got to open it up to everybody. Well, when do we draw the line on something like this too? And I know that's not the intent of this bill by any stretch, but it's
a logical extension.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's the reason that we have committees in the legislature, so that people can sit there and look at the bill and look for those unintended consequences that others perhaps didn't see when they drafted it or promoted it. I can tell you.
That's why they have us.
I told you the story about my bill regarding corporal punishment in the schools.
I can't believe you're actually bringing that up.
It was like pouring gasoline on my head and lighting a match. And I've described it that way on this show before.
I'll give you credit, Phil. You've actually brought this up a couple of times.
Well,
that
self-flagellation is a virtue in some ways.
I think that's admirable.
Yeah, it can happen. I got 30 good bills passed, most of them signed by the governor.
Yep.
2 we had to override or veto with. Some of the bills I wrote are, held up as national models by the U.S. Department of Justice, particularly involving sex offenders. But nobody read the bill. That just drove me nuts, because what I really was doing was trying to restrict it under current law. They could pretty much do what they wanted, and they were immune from civil suit. And I was going to put some safeguards in there, like they had to have parental permission, and everybody thought I just wanted to go out there and get a 2-by-4 and take it to every 4-year-old in the state. I don't know.
Now I know why you brought it up.
Yeah.
Bob, you want to wrap us up on this?
Well, I just think, with the fiscal note of $25 million in lost revenue, then I think that pretty much seals the deal for this bill, not making it very far.
All right, well, we'll see what happens. We will take a commercial break. When we come back, we're going to talk about marriage hearings up in Topeka. We'll be back in a couple of minutes.
It's time for Kansans who buy their own health insurance to make a big decision. What will you do? Go in circles? Or take a look at new health plans and new lower rates from Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas? If you're not happy with your current plan or didn't shop last year, call this number now. We'll tell you about new Blue Care plans, government subsidies you may qualify for, and how to avoid the higher tax penalties. Call now or visit our website for important dates, answers to your questions, and the information you need to enroll. With Blue Care, preventive care is covered 100%. You'll also have coverage for office visits, hospital stays, prescription drugs, and more. Ready to find out more? Go to our website or call now. Don't wait. The deadline to enroll for 2015 is February 15th. Beat the rush. Go for health insurance you can depend on. Go Blue. Visit bcbsks.com. Go Blue. That's bcbsks.com. Go Blue. Click now.
Chevy trucks always find new roads to conquer. We started with a family of the most dependable, longest-lasting full-size pickups on the road. And now, introducing the pickup that unanimously won the 2015 Motor Trend Truck of the Year. All made of high-strength steel, only at one place, your Chevy dealer. Now during Truck Month, GM owners can trade up to get a total value of $8,000 on select Silverados in stock the longest. It's Truck Month. See your local Chevy dealer today.
The 10th Annual Shopportunity, an event especially for women, Thursday, April 23rd at Newmarket Square. Shopportunity benefits people with disabilities. Call or visit cake.com to get your advance tickets before they're gone.
Shopportunity, together with these sponsors and Cakeland.
Sarah Hyland and Scott Foley must do everything Wendy McClendon Covey tells them.
I've won a bunch of Emmys.
I've won a bunch of Emmys.
Repeat after me.
Now fly around like a bee.
Premieres Tuesday after Fresh Off the Boat on ABC.
And welcome back. We have hearings in the Capitol building on the situation involving marriage. And House panel has been holding these hearings a couple of days worth, 2 or 3 days worth, if I'm not mistaken. And again, I think this is kind of, it's kind of almost goes with segment one, and in the fact that I think a lot of people wonder why this is happening and why are we spending time on it. Maybe there's a very good reason, Phil, or should I start with Bob on this?
No, I'm good to go.
Go for it.
Okay. What I see is perhaps some attempts at building a basis for legislation that enacted what has been enacted in other states, a special kind of marriage called covenant marriage.
Okay.
And there have been pieces of legislation in the past that, for example, wanted to repeal incompatibility as a grounds for divorce. They wanted to go back from no fault to fault divorce, where someone had to assert and prove that adultery occurred or that, for example, domestic violence occurred or some other tort that justified breaking the contract of marriage. I think that it is certainly another great postcard. The problem with this is the reality, of course, and having served in, and having worked in divorce cases as an attorney and having served as judge in the domestic department, you can't legislate maturity. You can't make people love each other. You can't make them be selfless that love and a working relationship requires. So I can certainly, and the problem too is that the other alternative would be to put some requirements or prerequisites in place before you could get a marriage license. Like, let's say what churches do, mandatory counseling. If you're going to have your ceremony in our church, you're going to go through some counseling first. They can't do that either by law. And so I think that it really ignores the root causes of divorce. I think when you look at divorce, divorce is really a symptom of other problems. Many divorces are as a result of financial issues, or of course for infidelity, or for everything you can think of under the sun. And I mean, I understand the intent of those that were holding the hearings, that they want to look at this issue, that they see a connection between divorce and state spending on welfare. They see a connection between divorce and increased costs and problems in the criminal justice system. Those relationships are clearly there. But is divorce a symptom, or is it actually the cause? That's the real question.
Bob, Gene Vickery says there is nothing more important than family, which may be an accurate statement, but what does the legislature have to do? I mean, why is this their business? I guess that's my question.
Yeah, and I'm skeptical of the ability of government to intervene in a meaningful way in here. Not that we haven't tried. We remember in 2011, we accepted a $1.4 million grant from the Department of Health and Human Services to promote marriage and I guess abstain from divorce in Kansas. And so they went to the Catholic Charities, and they've got a website called Love Letters from Kansas, and evidently they do have 4 offices around the state that are using that money to try to intervene and help families be more healthy in marriage. So it's like we're doing some of that already. I'm surprised. I don't know if this came up at the hearing or anything, but we're doing that a little bit already. You know, generally, like I said, I'm very skeptical of a government solution to problems of the heart and the home and the family, except that in marriage there are often innocent third parties who really don't have a choice and who are innocent and can't take care of themselves, and those are of course the young children of divorced families, which oftentimes are harmed through no fault of their own. And because marriage produces children very, very often, then there has to be some sort of state involvement as to what to do with the children, enforcement of custody arrangements, of child support, and various things like that.
You know, it's an interesting concept, I suppose, and part of this, I think, I know that it's a separate issue, but there has also been a bill that's been discussed that would make it more difficult to obtain divorces here in the state of Kansas, and that's another one. I understand the theory behind this, and I think it's an admirable thought, but it's just like you said a moment ago, Judge, you can't mandate love. You can't make somebody love somebody else. You can't make somebody act in a mature way and be selfless and that sort of thing. It doesn't work.
Well, one thing I think I could see would be, I mean, I have seen family struggle, and I've seen couples struggle in family law, and sometimes, you know, only one of them wants out, and the other one wants to stay in. And those are probably the most agonizing ones to deal with. When they both want out, you know, okay, no problem. And I could certainly see some support, because I know that, for example, the counseling that can help people come back to the mature processes that they need to assemble. Some counseling could perhaps help someone restore that in their lives, and the costs of it are exorbitant. And if you're low income or middle income, you can decimate a savings for the psychological or the means to repair the damage done. So I could see something that they might be able to do, perhaps facilitate private funding of these kinds of services. But I don't see how they could go much farther than that.
Well, do we know these covenant marriage states where the couple voluntarily agrees to enter into a relationship that's going to be more difficult to get out of?
Yes.
Do these things work do they work, I guess?
Well, a lot of times too with a covenant marriage, and let me explain what that is. Basically, the couple enters into an agreement that under the law is a super marriage, and there are certain prerequisites that have to be met, like a year's cooling off period, mandatory counseling and things like that to get a divorce. But they have to voluntarily enter into that. Now, being able to write the law and apply that retroactively to everybody that was married at the time the law was enacted, that's an entirely different circumstance. I have not reviewed the research in years, but I remember that there were advocates of it that thought it was a great thing, that it helped prevent ones that just said, to heck with it, and I'm out, and made them really think about the consequences of the decision, because all too often people make these decisions or say things under an emotional state, and they can't unwind that. And then the damage is done, where if they go through counseling, perhaps it can be pasted over and repairs made in reparations or whatever.
But I'm with Bob on this. I would love to see statistics in a state that has that, and see if it does anything, if it truly does make a difference.
I have not seen states enacted, I have not seen articles or other states enacted in at least 5 or 6 years. It was there for a few years, and there were states, I think, like Louisiana and Arkansas that did, but I don't think, I would assume that it hasn't been a success because it hasn't been adopted in other states.
All right. Well, I tell you what, I think we're going to take another commercial break. When we come back, we'll talk about protection that was rescinded for people of various sexual orientation and identity, and what that means here in the state. We'll be back.
I got hurt in a car wreck, and now I have too many bills. I need money. I need help. I need a lawyer.
Ring the Brad bell.
I'm attorney Brad Stotnick. If you've been hurt in a car wreck, I'm ready to take your call right now.
Ring the Brad bell. I rang the Brad bell, and my case was worth $550,000. Brad wins.
$1.1 million for my case.
Brad wins.
Ring the Brad bell and call me. It's just that easy.
Call 1-800-241-BRAD.
If your old car just isn't doing it for you anymore, we'll match you up with the car of your dreams. During the Meet Your Match event at Super Car Guys. Put just $8 down and drive away in a car you'll love today. A cute little car, $8 down. Big macho truck, $8 down. A van with junk in the trunk, $8 down. A sassy SUV, $8 down. Meet your match for just $8 down at Super Car Guys.
Buying a car doesn't have to suck.
For over 45 years, Southwestern Remodeling has let our work speak for itself. See our project galleries online at southwesternremodeling.com.
What brings your home to life? What makes it all work? And what could possibly make it any better? Introducing Cox Home Life, home security and automation. It doesn't just protect your home, it unlocks your home's full potential. So you have more control during the day and can sleep better at night. Cox Home Life. Protect, monitor, control.
Governor Brownback made national headlines this week when he rescinded protection for gay and transgender workers that are employees of the state. And this is actually something that was put in place by Governor Sebelius a few years ago. And Governor Brownback actually rescinded this order. And I guess the question is, why?
Okay. It's pretty clear from what the governor's statements were and from the reaction of other legislators that, in essence, this is a political statement that says that individuals of that sexual orientation are not a protected class, where discrimination and illegal firing occurs when it's based on, under federal law, race, gender, national origin. Those kinds are protected classes under federal law, and that sexual orientation is not a protected class. And I think that's what the political statement was this is not a protected class, that the executive order created law that was not recognized as a protection under the United States Constitution or the laws of the state of Kansas. And so that the governor, in issuing that executive order, essentially did extra legislative activity in creating a law as a policy when, in fact, it wasn't the law of the state. And that's why they wanted it repealed.
And I understand the statement, but why do it now? And Bob, maybe you can feel this one. To me, it feels strange. Why not just let it go? It happened years ago, and to me, it's a little suspicious that suddenly it's been rescinded. I understand it's not a federally protected class, but it just seems odd to me.
Well, perhaps, now the governor doesn't have to face an election again in the state of Kansas. He may have other ambitions, we just don't know. But I think this illustrates a situation where, government can discriminate without economic penalty. Now, in private markets, if you're looking for employees and there are qualified employees who aren't like you, maybe racially or gay or transgendered or whatever it is, but they're qualified employees, you've got an incentive to hire them, even though you may not really agree with everything that they do. Because in the private markets, you need to be competitive. But government doesn't have to be competitive with anybody. They can do things like this, and it just doesn't really matter as far as an economic type of penalty or anything like that. So, that's one of the ways where capitalism, I think, really works to help tear down these barriers like this. Milton Friedman famously talked about, the wheat he would buy, he doesn't know or really care if it was produced by a black, Hispanic, or white farmer. And this is a similar situation here. Government doesn't face those type of constraints.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think this is about a political statement. I mean, I would be really disappointed, and I really don't think there's any indication that they're going to try to do a McCarthyite purge of state government employees. I don't see anything that indicates that. I mean, there was a rally on the steps of the Capitol today by those opposed to this. I think that to quote a Shakespeare play, I mean, it's really much ado about nothing. I really don't see that, and if something like that does happen, I'll be really disappointed.
You say a political statement. What is the political statement?
The political statement is what I said initially, that this group of people are not a protected class. It goes back to the issue of whether it is a choice or is it environment or is it genetics? Is it a choice or is it something that they're made that way? And I think it goes back to that dichotomy of decisions too.
But Phil, I will counter, because I know this is going to be the thought from folks on the other side, is that the political statement that the governor's making is that he doesn't care for gay people. That would be, I think,
I understand the perception. I don't think I could agree with that. In my experience with the governor, I've always found him to be essentially a kind and generous person, and without regards to that. I think that his faith and his personality. For example, I mean, he's taken some very unpopular positions, for example, on immigration and things like that too. And perhaps my colleague here is right that there are other races that he may want to run for. We'll just have to see.
Maybe. Let's talk about the HR plan for state workers. That's another thing that Governor Brownback is in the news concerning, and I think it kind of goes, well, maybe not hand in hand, but it's a good segue to this topic.
I think that this is a really much more far-reaching proposal or action of the governor. Essentially, he's rescinding orders, and he's saying that new hires basically will have less job security as unclassified staff rather than classified. And what that does is it really allows the state supervisors in state government to fire at will and deny civil service protection to a much broader group of employees. Of course, Senator Hensley did his Chicken Little impression and said that, it's like commanding the officer at Fort Riley to declare war on his own troops, that if the morale of the state workers gets much lower, we're going to see a mass exodus from our workforce. And I'm sure that neither of those things is going to be true or occur. Some other issues I think that were intended to try to be cost saving. For example, they were going to lump together personal time, sick leave, and something else all into one. You just get so many days. You can do whatever you want with them. You don't have to come in and, we're not going to keep track anymore because it's just a bookkeeping nightmare. Some of the other intent is to emphasize performance rather than seniority in the selection of employees. And I mean, what I'm reading is I think they're going to tell everybody they're done, and then they're going to rehire the ones they want. I'm not sure, but
that would impact morale.
Okay, I work in state government. I'm a state government employee, although I'm an elected official. But I have contact with lots of employees, the clerks, the court reporters, the probation officers, and all. And nobody has come up to me and said, "Oh my God, the sky is falling. I'm going to quit right now." Fulfilling Senator Hensley's predictions. I think it's just business as usual, but we'll see how that works out.
Bob?
Well, I think that the elimination of seniority as a way to make staff reductions when it becomes necessary to do that. The schools have that rule, and I think that that's just because you've been there longer doesn't mean you're the best employee, and I think that would be a good thing. As far as being able to fire at will, that's the way pretty much the private sector works, and I think that there's kind of a helpful tension sometimes between employers and their bosses, thinking that, if I foul out my job bad enough, I'm going to get fired. That's always been pretty much the situation I've worked under, and maybe state employees don't feel that quite as much as people in the private sector do. So a little bit of tension there. The temptation again is that as I mentioned earlier, government does not operate within the constraints of competitive markets. Government can do pretty much what it wants and doesn't really have to be concerned about the bottom line as do private sector employers. So that's a factor that's not present in government, and that means there's more cronyism. There's there's always the political machine in big town where there's patronage. People are hired simply because they're of a political party or things like that.
All right. Let's take another commercial break. When we come back, we're going to discuss judicial selection. We'll be back in 2.5 minutes.
Hi, this is Pete Breyer. Where do you buy your fine jewelry? At the mall, a local jeweler, the internet? Let me say thank you to all of you who shop at Jewelry Savers at Lincoln and Rock Road. You already know we smoke everybody else on quality and price, and our selection is off the charts. When you shop at the mall stores, you join thousands with the same piece of jewelry. Our buying staff handpicks every piece of fine jewelry. We have easy financing and free layaway. You can even use your old gold jewelry to help purchase your new pieces, or we'll just buy it from you. Come see the Jewelry Savers difference, Lincoln and Rock Road.
Get hot water fast with Richmond water heaters from Menards. This 50-gallon electric water heater comes with a 9-year warranty, just $339. This high-efficiency natural gas model can save you 20% on water heating costs, only $549. Enhance the quality of your water with Morton water softeners. Get this 34,000 grain water softener for $349 after rebate, and this 45,000 grain water softener is just $499 after rebate.
Save big money at Menards. It's time to cash in during tax time at the Mattress Hub. Save big store-wide with our Red Tag event and savings up to $1,000 off. Buy now, save now with Tempur-Pedic. Take up to $200 off instantly, receive free delivery, plus buy a Tempur-Pedic, get a bed free. Plus our famous 1-year comfort guarantee. That's right, buy a Tempur-Pedic, get a bed free. Cheap Sheep, is that $100 bill real?
Follow the Cheap Sheep to the Mattress Hub.
I've been working out regularly for about the last 3 years. I've been a member for about 5 years. I've been able to improve the condition that my body is in. I get a lot of benefit from being active again and keeping up with my grandchildren. I enjoy the people, I enjoy the instructors, and I feel much better because of it.
Free unlimited guest privileges when you join now. It's like 2 memberships for the price of 1. This is a limited time offer, so come see us today.
My tax returns are here.
All right, I'll take those. Just sign here, here, and here. And good luck with that car.
Folks, don't let some clown take your money. At the largest Chevrolet Ford dealer in Kansas, we want you to get the car that you want to drive, and you can hold on to your refund.
No matter what your credit is, we've got the inventory and finance options to get you a newer or even a brand new vehicle, and you keep your hard-earned money.
I believe these belong to you, miss.
Your money goes further with us. Lubers, the friendly way to buy. And welcome back. Judicial selection has been a hot topic for the past couple of, sessions. And now we hear from Tim Owens, former Republican senator, who says that Governor Brownback told him that why not get out of the way and let us do this the way we want to do it, because we want judges that will rule the way we want them to rule. That's according to Tim Owens, not the governor.
Right.
We'll see if the governor says
at the time that conversation is supposed to have occurred, then Senator Owens was chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Similar provisions that are before the House and Senate now were there. The current situation and the current system that we have now is in constitutional form for the Supreme Court and in statutory form for the Court of Appeals. The statutory form for the Court of Appeals was already changed in a previous session, and the way Court of Appeals judges are selected has gone to essentially a federal system where the governor picks them and the Senate says okay and they're judges. Then they stand for retention every 6 years. Yep. There are 3 concurrent resolutions that both have to be passed by, that if they're going to go to before the voters for a vote, they have to change the state constitution. They have to be passed by 2/3 of the House and 2/3 of the Senate. The Senate has already passed similar provisions in the previous year, and so they have to start over because we had an election. The real question is whether the House has the requisite 84 to get to 2/3. That's a very tough hurdle. And so the nose counters I've talked to say, some say we're 2 up, some say we're 2 down. Whether the conversation occurred or not is frankly irrelevant to the discussion that should occur in the legislature. The current system is that 3 nominees are presented to the governor. The governor has to pick one. If the governor doesn't pick one, then the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court gets to pick one. The 3 nominees are selected by a commission that at one point was a majority elected by attorneys, and then the rest were appointed by the governor or by the House Majority Leader, whoever. And a lot of people had problems with that because it seemed like a very undemocratic process. You know, they decry that there's politics in it, whether it's, and the governor said at the last State of the State, hey, if you want to elect them all, fine. If you want to have a federal system, fine, that's what I want. It's difficult to ascribe motives to others. Let's just talk about the proposals. The federal system seems to have worked to a degree on the federal level. The reality is that no matter which process you've got, it's a political process. Yep. It's just, are the politics out front or are they behind a closed door?
Bob, school funding wouldn't have anything to do with any of this, would it?
It might be. There's a lot of people who would like to see less power of the court over the legislature to control matters like that. I guess I'm a little surprised that Tim Owens, who is a lawyer himself and seems to be no shrinking violet, is somehow upset or surprised that the governor lobbied him to vote one way on a bill. And then also that the governor would want judges that vote the way he wants. I mean, I think that Barack Obama's Supreme Court nominees again, that's a similar situation to where we'd be going if the Kansas Constitution has changed. I think Barack Obama appoints judges that vote the way, have a similar political philosophy, and I think that's what the governor would want as well. And I think it's important to note that at the level of justice we're talking about, which are appeals judges, that these judges actually are making law. I mean, court cases get up there because there's a dispute as to what does the law mean, and these justices have some latitude in deciding, and they can decide to rule in a kind of a liberal direction that expands government, or a conservative, or God forbid even a libertarian direction someday. So, these judges are making law, setting precedent that other courts have to follow along for a long time. It is a political thing, and these judges should be selected democratically, I believe.
Well, I did chuckle when I read this, because as you said, I don't think it's any surprise, or even really maybe any huge issue, that the governor would want somebody in that position that
has a similar philosophy.
Yeah,
and if I remember, Tim Owens, as chair of that committee, simply did not advance these bills. I mean, he used his very powerful position as a committee chair and just, bottled up those bills, and they didn't advance.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
It's important to note, I think, that here in Sedgwick County, one of the largest counties in the state, we have 28 district court judges. We have one current vacancy due to the tragic death of a really good judge, Judge Ballinger, and the governor is going to appoint his replacement without the consent of the Senate. As the state law says, he just fills it up. There are probably 30 or 40 lawyers now sending resumes and going through their tax clearance letters with the governor, and then he'll pick one. Yeah. And there's going to be another one that retires in April, and the same process will occur. So there are more checks and balances in the proposed system than there currently are with district court judges.
All right, let's take another commercial break. When we come back, we'll talk about Medicaid expansion, another hot topic for the past session, and we'll be back in 2 minutes.
If your old car just isn't doing it for you anymore, we'll match you up with the car of your dreams. During the Meet Your Match event at Super Car Guys. Put just $8 down and drive away in a car you'll love today. A cute little car, $8 down. Big macho truck, $8 down. A van with junk in the trunk, $8 down. A sassy SUV, $8 down. Meet your match for just $8 down at Super Car Guys.
Buying a car doesn't have to suck.
You're so pathetic.
The fact she has diabetes makes me happy.
You should kill yourself.
Anonymous cyberbullying. Yep, there's an app for that. Kids say some pretty nasty things when they know they can't be tracked, and that has local parents concerned.
Awful stuff being said about people because they don't have to put their name behind it. Sometimes it just absolutely blows me away.
Monday night at 10, we expose this app and the tech tricks schools can use to shut it down. The Anonymous Attack app, a Cake News I-Team investigation, Monday on Cake News at 10.
What brings your home to life? What makes it all work? And what could possibly make it any better? Introducing Cox Home Life, home security and automation. It doesn't just protect your home, it unlocks your home's full potential. So you have more control during the day and can sleep better at night. Cox Home Life. Protect, monitor, control.
The Thunder are returning to action this Sunday, so get your tickets now. Call 755-SEAT and catch the coolest game in town, or skip the line and buy online at WichitaThunder.com. It's an incredible night of Wichita Thunder hockey at Intrust Bank Arena, and you don't want to miss a single minute of the action. So grab a clue, be true to the blue.
And welcome back. There are a couple of bills concerning Medicaid expansion that are being batted around up in Topeka right now. One's not really touting expansion. It basically would just change the rule to the way it used to be, where the governor could actually make that decision without the legislature saying yes or no. That was one. That's one proposal that's out there, and I think another one would. Well, Jim Ward has one that would just expand it along the lines of the Affordable Care Act. And then there's some other talk, too, from other lawmakers, including Republican lawmakers, looking at an expansion of CanCare. So we've got several different forms of this thing floating around out there.
I really think that if you talk and have private conversations with some leadership in the legislature, that they understand that there are families out there that are not below 100% of the federal poverty line, but they don't make enough money to pay for it without some subsidy, and that fault actually can cost the state money too. I think it's important to note for our viewers out there too that the enrollment period is closing rapidly, and when they get their refund checks, they're going to see, a lot of them are going to see a little hit because they don't have insurance and they're not enrolled, and the first hit is very small compared to what comes in the 2015 tax year. So, you know, they need to really take a hard look at that. I think that their bills, Tom Sloan, Republican from Douglas County, filed a bill, and he wants to increase to 138%. And the problem that legislators have is that the first few years, it's pretty good because, you know, the feds are going to pay 98% of it or 90% of it. But after that time period closes, it drops back to the standard 60-40 split that the state revenues and federal revenues pay for this subsidy, and that's when they see the big ticket that they're not going to be able to pay, and that's why there's a lot of resistance to expansion, because look at the financial circumstances the state's in now.
Bob?
Well, it's a tough question for lawmakers because definitely we don't like to see people not have access to health care. But as it turns out, Medicaid is not really very good health care. You know, there was a situation a few years ago, 5 years ago or so in Oregon, where through some sort of quirk of something, they had some extra money to expand Medicaid in that state. Not enough to cover everybody, so there was a lottery. There was a randomized experiment where some people on a random basis got Medicaid, others didn't. And they found that the people with Medicaid used the emergency room even more than the others. And we're always told, you know, we got to cover these people so they don't get all the health care from the emergency room. And the Medicaid was also found not to really improve the outcomes of these people. Some of them went to the doctor more, but their health outcomes were not really any more improved. So I can understand the legislators wanting to provide health care to people, and we look at, there are governors in conservative states. I think of Jan Brewer in Arizona, Governor Pence in Indiana, and John Kasich in Cleveland, all conservatives, some of those maybe even presidential contenders that did early on adopt the Medicaid expansion into their states. So it's a tough issue. Me personally, Tim, I'd like to see Kansas move to some sort of more market-based reforms in health care, such as, you know, like Dr. Josh Umbear in the Atlas MD practice in Wichita charges children $10 per month, flat fee, very low prices for services such as x-rays and tests and all sorts of things like that. That type of model could be looked at the state, and we could perhaps use that as a way of providing medical services to low-income people and others as well.
You know, the other side of this too, I think, and people are concerned with, is the fact that we do have tax money that is moving out of the state, and that we don't recoup any of that goes toward the program.
There are those that have tried to sell Medicaid expansion as an economic stimulus package because it would cause a lot of federal money to come into the state of Kansas. And I think that those that do see the rational basis for it, they've got a couple political questions they're having a real hard time with. One is that if you do this, then you pretty much acknowledge that ACA, the Americans Health Care Act, is here to stay. And there are a lot of people that really want to get rid of it and go back to the way it was. And that politically, that's a very tough position to take. And there's those that say that, for example, Governor Pence in Indiana was very brave in doing that, but he really hasn't seemed to suffer the slings and arrows of political retribution as a result of that decision.
But you're right, exactly. There is that stigma among some lawmakers that if you do vote for this expansion, you're voting to bring Obamacare into Kansas more than it already is, and that's a powerful stimulus, I think, for some people.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's take another commercial break. When we come back, we'll talk about prison costs in the state of Kansas and what's happening there. We'll be back in a couple of minutes.
What is radon? Home exposure to radon gas is the leading cause of lung cancer death in the United States for non-smokers. In Kansas, 1 in 4 homes will test at or above the EPA action level. The Surgeon General recommends all homes be tested and fixed if necessary. Visit kansasradonprogram.org for more information. Test, fix, save a life.
Tracking the big stories.
Joseph Randall arrested. They're saying it's domestic violence.
No, it's not. Protecting you and your family.
Once inside, the scammers can then wreak havoc on your programs.
Always tracking, always alerting, always protecting. Kate News.
This week on GMA, she's starring in the Oscar-nominated movie American Sniper. And as the dramatic trial for Chris Kyle's murder unfolds, Sienna Miller comes live to GMA. Plus, Will Smith's in the house. This week, we're counting down to Oscar Sunday on Good Morning America.
If you want the best car and you're holding out for the best deal, why wait? You can drive a new Honda right now with 0 down, 0 security deposit, and 0 first month's payment. Or save now on the Accord with better gas mileage than Fusion, now just $199 a month. Just $159 a month gets you a new Civic with a backup camera standard. You won't find that with Corolla. Want a great car and a great deal? Why wait? And why settle for less than a Honda? See your Kansas Heartland Honda dealer now.
It's Mattress Firm's President's Day coupon sale. Through Monday, get coupon savings of up to $500 on all the best brands, like Sealy mattress sets. Save $100 off our everyday low price. Plus, through Monday, take an additional $100 off. Final price, just $298.99. And sleep interest-free for 5 years. Plus, save even more when you hashtag Sleep Happy. Only Mattress Firm guarantees our low price or your mattress is free. So don't miss Mattress Firm's President's Day coupon sale.
One of the ways that the state could look to save a little bit of money and hopefully help the budget a little bit involves prison overcrowding and what to do with our prison populations. And there have been a couple of comments that have been made here. First of all, we do have, I think our numbers we're right at the max on our prison population right now. So they're trying to figure out a way to take care of these folks, but in a safe manner without overpopulating the prisons. And it's very expensive to keep somebody incarcerated.
When I served in the Senate, I was privileged with the opportunity to serve both on the Judiciary Committee, the Select Judiciary Committee that met in the interims, and I worked on this topic extensively, helping rewrite the DUI law and changing the way that we approach this. And it is, if the bill comes out of the House, it's going to be it's easy to be mean, let's hit them with a stick. And now they found that the sticks cost a lot of money. And so what some of the bills do is to work at releasing nonviolent prisoners, prisoners who have committed nonviolent crimes like possession of marijuana on a second or third offense, which is a felony. They want to reduce the severity level of that crime to make a third offense a felony and not a second, as it is under current law and has been for a decade. Yeah. It is tough to be smart in corrections issues. I was an advocate for creating a treatment prison, and I had everything in place where you basically get the offender out of their playground and away from their playmates, and for 120 days you put them in a place that's all it does is talk about treatment, and then when they're done with that, they go back and see the judge reads the report and decides whether to give them probation or prison based on their participation and the genuine efforts that they might make there. They're talking about releasing a lot of substance abuse offenders to try to get it down. Right now, this prison system is at over 100% of capacity. They have shut down a number of the smaller satellite facilities because they were too expensive to maintain. The reality is that, like when we were looking at the last highway plan 10 years ago, I basically said, we only got so much concrete. We can pour it out flat, or we can pour it straight up, make a wall, or we can make a road, but we don't have enough concrete to do both. The cost for building a medium security bed is $100,000. So if you want to add 20 prisoners capacity, $2 million. Yeah. And then it's $30,000 a year, $28,000, because we've gotten a little cheaper a year to maintain that prisoner in that bed when you count the overhead, the costs of supervision and food and medicine and all that stuff. And of all the departments in the executive branch, the Department of Corrections took the greatest percentage of cuts, 29% over the 3 fiscal years from 2007 to 2010. A lot of really good, very viable programs that made Kansas a star in the corrections field and reducing recidivism were eliminated. And so, you know, that's penny wise and pound foolish. I know I've talked about this topic here before many times.
Yep.
And, you know, now the chickens are going to start coming home to roost.
Well, and we have discussed that before in a variety of ways. I mean, we talked about the Judge Riddell Boys Ranch, too. And, you know, it's hard to quantify your future savings by preventing somebody becoming a murderer because you don't know
You
for
can't
certain
prove a
who
negative.
prevented that.
You
Yeah.
can't prove something didn't happen.
And,
as
and it's a
far
shame.
as actually operating our prisons efficiently, in other words, in a cost-effective manner, we may be about as good as can be.
Yeah.
I've got a chart here from National Institute of Corrections showing the annual cost per inmate amongst the states. There's only 6 states or 5, I can't read exactly, that have a cost lower than Kansas. So it seems like we may be already operating pretty efficiently. This is just from 2013, so these are not very old statistics too.
And much like other units of government, when you look at the prisons, I mean, you know, they've got fixed costs, they've got buildings, they've got mortar, they've got electricity, they've got, you know, their cuts come from personnel and services.
Yeah.
That's where they can cut, you know, and I mean, who wants fewer guards?
Well,
Not a whole lot of people.
Yeah.
You know, who wants less supervision? Not anybody I can think
So
of.
the services and the programs get cut, and
Right.
those are the ways that you try to rehabilitate. those
Right,
that
and
are-
that's how you try to
that
keep
you
them
can
from coming
rehabilitate.
back.
Yeah.
And politically, I think appearing to be tough on crime is very popular with the voters, at least most of them, I think.
Sure.
And, you know, who wants to be the politician that's known for, you know, letting someone out of jail who then goes on to commit some horrific crime?
And there have been a number of parolees that have committed homicides or violent person crimes like rape that, you know, those always tend to make the news.
Yeah, they do. They do. So what's the state going to do? What
I think
we've talked about some of the cuts that have happened in the past. Some of that money has been restored by the governor in the past.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't know that all of it has.
No, I don't think what they're going to do is cut funding. I think what they're going to do is they're talking about changing, for example, the sentencing grid so that there are more people, depending on their criminal history score and the severity level of crime, that are pushed towards probation and supervision rather than incarceration automatically. That they are going to, for example, if somebody's got a couple person crimes in their background and they become criminal history B, but they get caught with a joint of marijuana, do you send them to prison for 46 months? No. You give them probation.
But
and
didn't we
tell them to go to treatment?
But see, then the other side of this is I think we cut our probation programs just last year.
Well,
the year before.
they seem to be operating at, from my personal experience here in Sedgwick County, I don't see that there's a cut there, that there are lots of programs in place, that there's always an adjustment. You know, do we have a better treatment plan? There are moves towards using what's called an LSIR, which helps, for example, a judge and the corrections staff that do supervision try to determine who really needs a lot more supervision than others. And it's not necessarily a cut, but it's a way to get more bang for the buck and reallocating the resources to the most at-risk offenders.
And I know what we'll come back on this one is we've cut taxes, we're cutting, and this, you know, when we cut taxes and we want to reduce taxes, which everybody wants to do, we cut taxes in good times. We don't save up the money in rainy day funds. We don't believe in doing that here in the state of Kansas because politically it's much better to just be the person that cuts taxes. And then when you have situations like this, when we're dealing with prison populations and we're dealing with offenders that possibly could be rehabilitated versus not, it kind of comes home to roost. It seems like we do a lot of activity like this where we cut off our nose to spite our face.
I think a more accurate adage would be penny wise and pound foolish. Yeah. You know, we're saving a penny now, but we're going to spend a pound later because, I mean, and what is the real cost to society for an offender that commits a new crime, a new person crime? I mean, you can't quantify the psychological damage. You can quantify the guy that's, you know, breaks into the storage locker and, you know, go pawn stuff so he can go do whatever. Yep. But when you let that violent person crime offender, that sociopath, that psychopath out, you know, because you don't want to keep him, the cost can be incalculable.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about constitutional carry. We've got about 3 minutes left in the program. That is, we discussed it on the show a few weeks ago. I know this is something near and dear to your heart. Phil, give us a point here real quickly.
Well, you know, let's talk about what constitutional carry is. Constitutional carry is basically, in most instances, repealing the prohibition against carrying a firearm concealed on your person. That's basically what it is. Now, if someone is in a disabled class, like they're a convicted felon or been declared to be a danger to themselves or others for mental health issues, they still can't possess a gun, so they can't carry one either legally. This law has been on the books in states like Alaska and Vermont for decades. Has it been, you know, no Dodge City in Vermont? It just really bothers me when they use that example. This is a lot of people that are very concerned about something that will probably be much ado about nothing also. I do hear from, I think they've got the votes to pass it. I think it's beyond the governor's desk, and I think we'll all be able to do it if we want to by July 1st. But I even hear a lot of second thoughts and expressions of dissatisfaction from people that I've known in the firearms community for decades. There's a lot of gun owners that don't like this too, just like the representative from Saline County that's a life member of the NRA, and he doesn't think this is a good thing to do either. But we'll see.
Let's let Bob have a shot on this one, no pun intended. We've got about a minute and a half left.
Well, I think, as I said maybe a couple of weeks ago, that if the Constitution gives us the right to bear arms, and I believe it does, then why do we need a certificate of permission from the governor to be able to exercise that right? And then further, I think someone said much ado about nothing. There's been so many concealed carry permits issued in Kansas that I would imagine that almost everybody who really wants to do it may already have that permit already. So this may add just incrementally a little bit to the actual number of people who really end up carrying a gun concealed.
Now, forgive my ignorance on with our current concealed carry rulings. If you want to permit, do you have to take a class?
Yes, yeah, you have to take about an 8-hour class. You have to pass a background
investigation
check
by the sheriff too.
And that is to me, I think, very valuable and important.
There will still be permits issued so that your carry concealed permit's valid and you can carry outside the state of Kansas. So that whole system will still be in place too.
Yeah, I still think you should take a class. It's just a good thing to do if you're going to own a gun. I've done it myself, and you learn a lot in it. I think it's a good thing. All right, guys, we're out of time. Thank you very much for being on the program. Thank you for watching the show. If you have any questions or comments, please email me at thisweekinkansas@cake.com. Thanks for watching the show, and hope you have a wonderful week.
Hi, this is Pete Breyer. Where do you buy your fine jewelry? At the mall?